Welcome to the program today, everyone. So glad you've joined us because we have a great topic today. It's all about money. And we have an expert to help us through all of our money issues. His name is Bob Wheeler. He's a CPA and author. He also hosts workshops. And he wrote a book called The Money Nerve, Navigating the Motions of Money. So Bob's going to give us all a lot of help today. So make sure that you listen in for the whole show. We're going to get all kinds of tips. Before I bring Bob on, I'd like to give you a little bit of his background. Bob Wheeler is a CPA with over 25 years of experience. His world travels led him to all points on the globe, especially those at high altitudes. He has climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa and arrived at the base camp Everest in Nepal, as well as several smaller mountains in between. With warmth and humor, his experiences on the road, in the office, or in a Grecian marathon feed his wit and stand-up comic. So sorry about that, Bob. I got a little tongue twisted there. Bob, you're a CPA and you're also a CFO of the Comedy Store. You have quite an extensive background in money and life. So welcome to the program. This is going to be a great show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Excited.
So I got to ask you, what compelled you to write this book? Because it's a great title, The Money Nerve. I mean, does that not say it all? We all have that, don't we?
We do. And, I thought it was obvious that we all had that. And what prompted me to write the book was a lot of my tax appointments turned into therapy sessions. And the common thread was people kept saying to me, I'm the only one that has messed up my finances, and if anybody knew the truth about me, they would just hate me, and I wouldn't have any friends. And, people I would go through boxes of Kleenex, and I realized, oh my gosh, everybody thinks they're the only one. I've got to start this conversation. People need to know that the people sitting right next to them have issues around money, and they're not alone. And so I really wrote this as a way of starting to let people know that, there were people that could relate to this experience.
Well, I'll tell you, the CPA knows everything, don't they?
They do. The CPA and the garage and the garbage guy.
Yeah, there you go. And I'll tell you what, it is emotional when you do your taxes and you have to look at your finances once a year. And most of us try to avoid it. And we hope to find someone like you who can guide us through it. So today you're going to navigate us through some other things, some more of that emotional trigger with money and how we can clear it. Can you start off and tell the audience what you have found is, what's our biggest problem with money, Bob?
Well, I think the biggest problem is that we have a lot of unconscious information that we picked up as children and then accumulated as we grew, and we don't know that we're working on that unconscious level. And so we have these voices of self-sabotage or telling us that we don't deserve, or tell us that if people find out the truth about us, they won't really think that we're successful. And then we make what we think are logical decisions around our money based on that baggage that we've been carrying and we're just unaware of. And so it's a lot of people doing unconscious decision-making.
So when we're getting through our day-to-day life, and it hasn't been a walk in the park the last few years with this economy in the U.S. that we've been dealing with, even worldwide.
Right.
And so, you think, oh, maybe next month it will be a little better, or next year things will, pick up. And I've noticed a lot of people are not being so optimistic, and, that's where those unconscious decisions can really get us, can it?
Absolutely. And, the thing is, even as you're saying, and I hear this all the time, is, I'm hoping next month it'll get better, or this is going to happen. But what most people seem to express is that it's going to come from an outside source, that somebody else is going to come in and give them the bonus, or somebody else is going to help them reduce their expenses. And the reality is we each have to, in all of our decision-making, make proactive choices that benefit us financially, emotionally, and not wait for somebody else or some other outside force to save us.
So what would you suggest? Obviously, you would suggest for the audience to get a copy of your book for more information. And
Sure.
I read your book cover to cover. It was very entertaining. Even
Good.
though you brought up a lot of emotional triggers with money,
Yes.
It was a great book, Bob. I'm so happy that you wrote this book. I think it can help a lot of people.
Thank you. The reason I use humor in the book and I use humor when I work with my clients is because it's a way to disarm them and let their guard down so that we can dive in a little bit deeper. Because this area is so fraught with emotion. It just scares people. And I just really want to, it's not about judging. It's about being curious and trying to figure out where do we self-sabotage.
Well, let's talk about fear. Let's just put it out there, Bob.
Yeah.
The fear when you have to open your bank statement or look online, or you get your commission check and it's not as big and you're like, oh, I was, counting on more money. There's so much fear surrounding money. What could you give the audience some information on that to maybe help them through their fear issues?
Yeah, here's the thing. A lot of us learn about fear around money from our parents. Maybe when we were young, our parents were arguing because there wasn't enough money, or we're going to have to move every month because things are too tight, or arguments. And so people tend to get a lot of anxiety around money because they watch their parents either talk about it or talk about it sideways, keep it under the wraps. Not in front of the kids. So it was a taboo topic, so it just already brings in anxiety. And then coupled with the fact that in high school and college, they don't really teach people how to balance a checkbook, how to make a budget, explain why credit cards and interest rates can get you in trouble. And so there's all this information that we don't get, and then all of a sudden we're thrown into, you're an adult. And all of a sudden it's double anxiety because we don't know what to do, and nobody told us, and everybody else seems to know what they're doing. Oh, my gosh. And so then we start faking it, and then we start just building this fear, and it's our own judgments, it's our own competition with the neighbors or the people at work, and we just create this whole story in our head that it becomes a runaway train.
And then it doesn't help any when there's information floating around. The dollar's going to crash.
Right.
And the government's spending us into, being in debt to China for the next 2,000 generations or whatever. And so we not only are dealing with the fear of our own subconscious mind and upbringing, but it's all around us.
It's all around us.
Yeah. And you mentioned in your book, planning really can help.
Right.
Making the plan, doing the budget, all those basics that we probably avoid. Or is it because of fear we're avoiding it?
Well, it is fear. The thing I hear about budgeting a lot is people say, I don't want to deal with budgets. I don't want you to teach me a budget because you're going to tell me what I can't have. And I don't look at a budget like that. I don't look at a budget as saying you must sacrifice this and that. I look at a budget as being additional information so I can make choices, right? Because I can't do everything that I want to do in the world at the same time. And so I have to make choices. And a budget is a way that helps me see where could I cut back on some things so that I can have more of the things that I really want. And it's not about restriction. But a lot of people feel like if they actually look at the truth, they won't be able to handle it. And I've had people say to me when I've had a client, I gave her all this information, and she looked at me and said, don't ever give me something like that again. That is too much of a reality check, and I won't have it. And she stormed out of my office. And, she was serious. She just didn't want to know. She just found it easier to just hope that it worked out. And a lot of people do that. They just hope that somehow it's going to work out, and I'm not actually going to look at it, and I'm not going to be responsible for making choices. So to me, a budget's a great way. And the other thing is to write out your goals. I want to take a trip to Paris. I want to buy a house. I want to buy a new car. And set those down and figure out the timetables so that you can figure out how to put aside money so that if you want to buy that car, I'm going to put away $400 a month until I get my down payment, or whatever that might be. If you don't do that, then it's just going to either happen or it doesn't. But studies have shown when you write out your goals, when you write out what you want, that more often than not it comes to fruition.
Well, and think of this as well. We saw several years ago, Bob, all these people flipping houses with these crazy mortgages. And my husband and I, we felt like we were from a different generation. We're like, no, do not do the interest only. Pay your house off. Get rid of your private mortgage insurance. Like, do all the basics that old school taught us.
Absolutely. The media is really good at selling us a bill of goods that aren't real. And the media says, well, everybody else is doing it. You should get on board. Why do you want to be left behind? And you deserve it now. You can pay for it later, but you deserve it now. And I think we've really gotten into this must have it now, temporary, disposable, got to have it.
Well, and you find also in the younger generation, like the millennials, they all have the latest, Apple computer, iPod, iPad, but they don't have a car.
Right.
It's so funny. It's, it's such a shift. And, but really the way to get through all this is to get back to the basics, but also look at the emotional part of it. Am I right, Bob?
Absolutely. And what I tell people is, some people think, oh, okay, great, I'm going to look at some issues around my money, I'm going to figure it out, and then I never have to deal with it again. And that's not the case. Money is one of the few relationships you have that will last a lifetime. Whether you deal with it or not, you're always going to be involved with putting food on the table and putting a roof over your head. And it's just one of those things, you have to constantly revisit it. And even if you become conscious of it, it doesn't mean that you still might not get anxious when you're getting ready to sign a contract for a house. But at least if you're aware of that, you can understand why you're screaming at the kids and, creating fights is because you're just really anxious about this paperwork you're about to sign. So it's really more just being aware of it as opposed to making everything go away and life is perfect.
Well, how do we have a better relationship with money? It's so funny. It's one minute we are told money is the root of all evil.
Right.
We're kids, or what you hear comments, oh, they have a lot of money, but they're very mean people type.
Right.
But then you're going to college and you're out in the working world and you're striving to have a better life. And then the same relatives that are saying all these negative things about money and success are oohing and eyeing at the people getting Mercedes in the family.
Right, absolutely.
It's like such a conflict. I don't know.
It is. And, I think the biggest thing is that we have to, in each of us, own the contradictions that we have. Because I find this true. We'll do workshops and people will say, rich people are evil. Rich people are mean. And rich people are selfish. And then they'll say, I want to be just like that. I want to have all the money, but I won't be like the way everybody else is. And the truth is, there are some people with lots of money that are very selfish, and there are lots of people that are very benevolent. And so we have to realize that we are walking contradictions. That's the nature of being human, is we have the potential to be loving, and we have the potential to be evil and not so nice. And both of those reside in us. And so until we can start to get comfortable with, it's not always going to be 100% black and white. There's a lot of gray. And just learning to be comfortable with that and learning what's really important for each of us. And that's always different. I have some people that think they're supposed to make lots of money, but the truth is they actually just want to be creative and do their thing. But for their mom and dad, they need to make money, so they go through the motions of trying to please their parents, at the same time sabotaging, because that's not really what they want.
Oh, that's so true. Because, even when you're in college and you're picking your major, how many people don't follow their heart and their passion, right, and they get a business major because they think that's what they're supposed to do
exactly,
to, make a living. and they have no heart in it or no interest whatsoever in business. They should be more in the arts or something.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of people that do that. Mom and dad were CPAs, mom and dad were doctors, mom and dad were lawyers, so I have to be one too. Or, mom and dad were actors, and so I don't want to be like them because they were just too creative. I want to be more practical. So we all have different experiences, but yes, we're sometimes trying to please our parents and what we think everybody else wants instead of listening to what our intuition is and what our heart tells us is what would fulfill us.
Well, this is such a great conversation. I am so glad that you're bringing all these issues up because we all deal with it. Mm-hmm. And Bob, we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we're going to get really into this book, and I want to hear all about your adventures as well.
Perfect.
So thank you all for joining us with Bob Wheeler, author of The Money Nerve. We'll be right back.
Would you like a tool to clear your energy field and raise your vibration instantly? Solfeggio Sound Healing from Earthly Frequencies is a new CD created to bring you earthly healing vibrations combined with higher dimensional galactic energy. Use this sound healing for meditation, massage therapy, releasing negativity, and astral travel. Solfeggio Sound Healing by Ted Winslow. Now available on iTunes and Amazon.com. Have you been told you should write a book? Do you need a little help getting started? Or maybe your manuscript is already written and you require some fine-tuning before you publish. Big Country Publishing offers writing coaching packages that are custom-tailored to you. Contact Big Country Publishing today so they can help you to get your book and message out to the world. Learn more at www.bigcountrypublishing.com. When it comes to publishing, there is a difference. At Big Country Publishing, they work with you on a personal level to create a custom publishing package that's tailored to your needs as an author. Their design team and experts in the industry will contribute to you to create the book that you've always dreamed of. Isn't it time to go big? Contact them today at www.bigcountrypublishing.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Wheeler, a CPA and author. Bob also hosts workshops. He wrote the book, The Money Nerve. Bob, on break, you brought up something that was really interesting. And, this is a topic people just don't talk about.
Right. It's people, the thing that I find when I go out in the world and talk with people is they always thank me for giving them permission. And I always tell them you actually always had permission. But a lot of people, don't talk with their friends about their credit card debt, or they don't talk about the raise that they didn't get, or how are they going to make ends meet. And so everybody just walks around with all these conversations that they can't have, just living in fear and shame.
That's true. Or you could see, there's so many people that, I can bring up someone that I know, was, we're so successful at this investment business, blah, blah, blah. All the while their house is foreclosed, they're in bankruptcy.
Right.
And they're trying, they're driving the Mercedes, the kids are in private school, and they're trying to get everybody to invest with their company. They're not giving the real story.
Right.
And so it's like there's this facade, with people and money.
Oh, huge facade. I mean, Los Angeles is terrible for that. Everybody's driving around in Mercedes and living the good life, and the truth is they're in high debt, they're about to lose everything, and they're running around trying to look cool because they're totally afraid they're about to lose it all. But then if people see that and they say, well, gee, they can do it, I should be able to do it. But it's a false reality for a lot of people.
And don't you think that goes... people who are trying to do the right things and stay out of debt and, following the budget, and they're seeing their peers out living, the lifestyles of the rich and famous, then they start judging themselves that they're doing something wrong or they're a failure. But they don't necessarily know the whole story, do they?
They don't. And that's the interesting thing. We make up these stories in our head and say, geez, I was trying to do it right. They're not doing it right, but they're getting a better life. And the truth is, we don't know what's going on for them. They may be having all kinds of fears and judgments themselves, but they're putting on a good show. And so then we beat ourselves up. And really, it's so important that we don't compare ourselves to other people. It's really just important that we do what feels right to us and keeps us in our own integrity and focus on that. But it's so easy with the media telling us what everybody's doing. But there's lots of people out there that are budgeting, and there's lots of people out there that are taking responsibility. We just don't see those people because they're not jumping up and down saying, look how responsible I am. They're just doing what they need to do.
Yeah, they're not jumping up and down with a 6-year-old car going, I don't have a car payment.
Yeah, exactly. They're just doing the work.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, you are like a therapist, Bob. I can see why people say that about you. It's because now CPAs have a bad rap.
They do.
They're avoided.
They are. We're like the dentist.
What?
We're like the dentist.
Yeah, like the dentist.
People come to us kicking and screaming.
They do, Bob. But, you're a likable guy, and you're an adventurous. Tell us about these adventures. I mean, you have been all over the world with your adventures.
I have. And, what's funny is my first trip, I was invited to go to Greece. A friend of mine said, hey, come run the marathon with me in Greece. It'll be great. It's the original course. And I actually said to him, well, only rich people can travel, because that was a belief I had. And I said, so I can't go. And he said, where did you get that? And I said, no, well, that's the way it is. Rich people travel. I'm not rich. I can't travel. And he's like, get over it. And so I took the trip, and it was life-changing. And from there, I traveled the world. And I've been to Africa, all parts of the continent, Egypt, the Amazon. But you know what I learned? When I was in Tanzania, people there make $100 a year. That's the average income. They were the happiest people I ever met. They were so happy, and they were so generous. And I realized because they come from a place of gratitude. And they're just happy to be alive. And they don't worry that they don't have the latest smartphone and they don't have the newest technology. They're just so happy to be there, living the land, and just expressing themselves. And I learned a lot from that.
Isn't that funny that you deal with money issues all day long, and you see, as a CPA, how budgeting and saving, when you have a client for 15 years and you see them building their wealth, so all the principles,
right.
But yet you had that subconscious or that judgment, oh, rich people travel.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's we've all got our little stories that we've used to convince ourselves of a certain truth that's not really true. And, I carried that for a long time. And it was, literally when I finished the race in Athens, and I actually realized I had just come across the ocean, I had just run a marathon, this guy walked up to me and said, hey, are you okay? And I broke down onto the ground, and I just sobbed for 10 minutes because it was such a belief that I had, and I had actually finally let it go. It was amazing.
Wow. Isn't that amazing how much our beliefs are embodied in us?
Absolutely.
It's just not in our head.
It's not in our heads. It's in our bodies. It's in our bodies. And we hold it, especially around money. And when we can start letting it go, we just start becoming so much more free to be who we are.
Well, and, we are so much more than what the balance of our bank account is, or the number of cars in our garage, or, the trips even that we take. We're so much more, Bob. And what could you give people out there who are feeling knee deep in debt, and they're like, oh, a trip to Greece, I could only wish, and I can't even see where I'm, going to make my bills next month. What kind of hope can you give them?
Well, what I can say is I've worked with people who have been in that situation that have said there's no way we can turn it around, and with an intention and the desire to make some changes and the willingness to do hard work, I have had clients turn around from significant debt to with a year later having bought a house, paid off their credit card debt, and gotten caught up with their taxes. And it was really just as simple as, I don't need to eat out every night. I don't need to have a frozen coffee every afternoon. I don't need my latte. And they just made some choices that didn't devastate them, but they just focused on a goal of, I can do this. And I have seen many people turn their lives around. It's doable. It's not fun. It's not easy. If it was, everybody would just be completely debt-free and not even worrying about it. It takes a little bit of work, but it's so doable. And it's always, it's really inspiring when I see people jump in and do the work and really commit to being, the change in their life and being the positive force and believing in themselves. So it's doable. And it's
in that belief in yourself,
Absolutely.
Just because you got into a financial, hard place, or doesn't mean that defines you. And what happened in the past, you can move forward. We all make mistakes. Look at how many billionaires out there have filed bankruptcy and closed businesses and lost houses and, started another business and then they hit it big. I mean, there's just so many success stories of people starting over.
No, absolutely. And, it's amazing. To me, at the end of the day, wealth is measured by our experience, our rich experiences, not how much riches we have, family, travel, connection, whatever those things might be. But it doesn't even matter how much money you make. There was a guy, and I don't remember his name, he was in the top 100 of Forbes magazine, and he ended up dropping from like 42nd to 87th, and he ended up killing himself. He jumped in front of a train, and this is about 4 or 5 years ago. He was so devastated because he wasn't he had dropped in his ranking. He was no longer as successful as everybody else thought. But he was in the still top 100 of the world. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many zeros come after that one. If you don't have a belief in yourself, it's going to be a struggle.
Well, you just brought up a really good point because, the person making $100,000 a year thinks, oh, if I could only make $250,000 a year, all my problems would be gone,
Right.
And the guy who's making $3 million a year is thinking, oh, if only I could be at $13 million a year, then, and to someone not a millionaire is like, how could you not be happy with $3 million a year? Or how could you not be happy with $100,000 a year? And it's like we all are suffering from the same issues of the, no matter where we're at, like that Forbes 100 guy.
Right. And that's the thing, especially in this country, we tend to teach, and the media tends to teach us, that we're all in, there's a lack of abundance, and that we're all in almost a starvation mode with our smartphones and our flat screens and our new TVs. We're all actually coming from a place of a lack of, instead of seeing the abundance. And my goal with a lot of people is really to start to see the abundance that we actually already have and start to recognize and be grateful for what we've already got going. And that's, I think, in this society, we just don't do enough of recognizing that we actually have it really pretty good. And to learn to be grateful and then still have the desires to have more money. I mean, I enjoy money, and I like having a nice car, but I like having a nice car as a reward to myself, not as a showpiece to show everybody that I'm better than them. I'm not competing with anybody.
Right. Now, it's interesting because when you're, single and you're, right out of college, everybody's competing who got the better job,
Right.
Who's working with the Fortune 500 company or who's, going to Manhattan and getting training, from some big financial firm, whatever it may be. So
Right.
There's that competition. Then you get married. And it's, competition with the peers about the wedding, the new house you buy. Then you get kids, and then it's competition with the kids. And it's that, it's like you don't escape that keep up with the Joneses type thing. I think a lot of people do get in financial problems because of that.
Absolutely, because a lot of people, their ego gets in the way and says, inside they say, I know I can't afford it, but outside they're saying, well, I can't let anybody know that I can't afford it, so I'll just have to figure it out, and I'll wing it. And so they make commitments, and they sign contracts, and they buy things that really put them in a really bad space because they're trying to feed their ego.
Okay, so you bring up in your book, I thought this was really interesting because, you're talking about moving forward isn't that hard, and you talk about organizing your life and not just your finances. So could you talk a little bit? That might be a good place for people who feel overwhelmed right now to start.
Well, I think one of the first things about getting organized is, take a personal assessment of what's going on with you. First of all, what's going on with your job, what's going on with your money situation, what's going on with your debt. Get a real picture and really start to see where you are so that you can then determine where do I want to go. And for a lot of people, they don't want to look at that stuff. And even when I talk about budgets, I talk about honest budgets because I say, listen, if you have to go out and buy fancy purses or you like to drink on a weekly basis, you got to bring all that in. It's not saying that it's good or bad, but you just need to really be aware of what your current situation is. And once you can start to do that, I think, and then start to list out goals and start to figure out what you really want, you can then start working towards them. But if you don't get organized and figure out where am I, you can't really figure out how you're going to get to where you're going because you don't know where you are.
And so when you're getting your financial house organized and you're writing your budget and what are some tips you give people that feel like, how can I write a budget when I'm basically paying one bill at a time as the money comes in? How do you get them to clear some of that fear?
Well, what I do is I really like people to, even if you know you're just paying one bill at a time, start to just list out what are the things that come up every month. I know I've got to pay for my rent, or I have to pay for my food. I know I have to pay for have a little bit of clothing, whatever those things might be, and really start to figure out where can I have a lot of people that say they have no money, and then I notice that they come in with a frozen coffee every morning that they paid $5 for. So, right, so they're not really being congruent with what they're saying and what they're doing. And so we have to start to be aware of those things so that we can say, oh, you know what, I go out for lunch every day and I spend $10. Maybe I could make a tuna fish sandwich and bring it. So one thing is to start to look at all that, and then to also envision getting ahead, envisioning that, it's going to get better. Maybe I'm not getting enough money at work, like I deserve a raise, but I'm afraid to ask for a raise. Or maybe I think I'm just going to wait for them to see how wonderful I am. Or maybe I haven't gotten a raise because I'm going to work because I'm angry. And so I'm not really bringing myself fully to my job because I'm angry that I'm not getting paid enough. So maybe if I can shift my attitude, my boss will say, gee, you need a raise. Or maybe I just need to have the confidence to walk in and say, hey, I feel like I deserve a raise. It's been a long time. Could we have that conversation? So it's really about starting to get proactive and deciding, am I willing to take steps and formulate plans that are going to be for the benefit of my future?
So this is something that I deal with, Bob, being in the alternative health and transformational self-help kind of industry that I'm in. Yes. I work with a lot of people who, they're healers, they're life coaches, they've left the corporate world, right, and now they're doing these different healing type businesses.
Right.
And they're spending more money than they're making. They're taking every class there's offered, right, to get another certification because that will be the thing that makes them money,
right.
And they're really not working at it as a business. And so many times I see people quit their day job to start a new business. They don't even know how to start a business. And then they really get into some financial problems. So, do you work with people to, teach them how, don't quit the day job if you're starting a new business
absolutely.
in a new industry?
Absolutely. It's funny. I work with a lot of creative people, and I work with people that have great ideas that they're going to start a business. And what I do with people is we actually, when people come to me and say, I want to start this new business or I don't want to be in corporate, we actually we do a budget of what it would take to run that new business, and we look at all the costs, and then we figure out how much do they need to put aside from their current day job so that they can actually make it come to fruition. So I don't tell people just run out and start just doing your new thing because you don't want to be part of corporate, but let's take a look and see if it's feasible. I had a client who wanted to start her own therapy practice, and she had a full-time job, and they were going to let her start working part-time. So we worked out a 2-year plan. Now, as we got close to the 2-year plan, she realized she wasn't quite ready. And so we were able to adjust it and say, well, you know what? We need to go about 8 more months before you're ready to jump out on your own. And we just followed that plan, and then she's actually got her own practice now. And the amazing thing is her business has been picking up even more than she anticipated because she planned ahead. So she knew that she wanted to take this many workshops, and we worked all those things out so that it was tangible and we had a real plan. And then she was able to follow it rather than just saying, I hate working for my job. I think I'll just go and impulsively just do something else, and I'm just going to trust the universe. It'll all work out. We have to take a little bit of responsibility. I certainly trust in the universe, and I also want to be proactive as I flow through the universe.
That's great advice, Bob. I'm really glad you explained that because I think it's going to help a lot of people listening. And we have a break now. We're going to be right back with Bob Wheeler, the author of The Money Nerve.
Good.
Would you like to speak with a medical professional who integrates alternative health with traditional medicine, all from the comfort of your own home? It is easier and more affordable than you may think. Mary Ann Simpson is a nurse practitioner with 20 years experience specializing in women's health, hormone balancing, weight loss, and anti-aging. Contact her today to take the first step to feeling better at www.maryansimpsonnp.com. Would you like a tool to clear your energy field and raise your vibration instantly? Solfeggio Sound Healing from Earthly Frequencies is a new CD created to bring you earthly healing vibrations combined with higher dimensional galactic energy. Use this sound healing for meditation, massage therapy, releasing negativity, and astral travel. Solfeggio Sound Healing by Ted Winslow, now available on iTunes and Amazon.com.
Hello, I'm Lauren Sky, and I've been teaching people how to live a better life through meditation. I've developed a 7-lesson audio course called Meditation for Living. These energy skills will teach you to find peace within, to release stress and pain, and to create your life according to your true path. Isn't it time you start living the life you've always dreamed of? Visit laurensky.com. That's LAURENSKYE.
Welcome back, everyone. We're speaking with Bob Wheeler. He's a CPA. He hosts workshops and also wrote the book, The Money Nerve. If you'd like to contact him or find out more information about his offerings, go to his website, themoneynerve.com. Bob, this is a great conversation. I feel like we need an extra hour to go over everything.
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation that always has to be revisited, I feel.
It really does, because we're all screwed up about money. We're not. Okay, that wasn't a very positive statement, and I will look at that chapter where you talk about that after the show. But Bob, what could you tell us about some of your workshops and how you work with people? I know you also are working with another concept about how people have, release with their body and money. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple different workshops that I do. One is typically a 4-week workshop, and it's called Proactive Abundance. And we do go through mental mapping and learning our stories, and we do some processing and sharing and journaling, and it's really a powerful work. The other thing that I do is the workshop's called Money at its Core, and it's basically a somatic, body-based workshop, and we work with energy, and we really work with releasing the stuff we hold in the body. And it's amazing. I was talking with somebody the other day, and I think we realized when we get into the money and the body work, people go real deep really quickly, and I think it's because we're dealing with an inanimate object. We're not dealing with mom and dad, so we're not dealing with anger at mom and dad, and we're not dealing at our relationship. We're dealing with money, so we don't have as much judgment that we have to hold on to, and people go in really deep. The thing is, it covers all those other issues, so we end up dealing with the relationship with mom and dad, and dealing with stuff we learned as a kid. But it's amazing. I mean, people have meltdowns, and we work through that stuff, and it's a lot of healing. I really am a big believer that we hold our emotion around everything in our body.
I totally believe that. I've been involved with energy work for over 20 years. So when you told me about that, I was very interested, Bob, because think about how much we hold on to of that emotion and the fear and the judgment and all of the things surrounding money, in our body. And it could be, you get bad financial news and it takes your breath away. I mean, think of how many times you hold your breath.
Right. Right.
You get a letter from the IRS and you panic. That's why we call Bob.
Right? It's scary. It's scary.
It's scary, and I learned on my own how to release a lot of fear about taxes and money and all of that with a small business just by learning tax code and just from a bookkeeper type mentality,
Sure.
And then I work with my CPA. And, knowledge is power, right? We
Absolutely.
all know that.
Absolutely.
So the more we can know about how we're holding it in our body, or take one of your workshops or your book, that can just release us so much, just learning a little bit more.
Absolutely. It's so empowering to start to realize, even just knowing that you're not the only one is huge. For a lot of people, just knowing they're not the only one is a huge relief. And so I agree, the more you can learn, doesn't mean you have to know everything, but just starting to understand and be aware, and it just opens up so much.
Yeah, and what about the people who have fear? So we focused a lot on the show about when you don't have enough money. But what about all those fears of you don't want to have too much money because you don't want to be the richest one in the family that everybody comes to?
Well, that most people have more of fear of success than they do of failure.
And so do you see that a lot, with the work you do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see it all the time. And I think for myself, I did that too. I played small because I was afraid of my power and my leadership, and I was afraid that, then people would see me and then they might try and tear me down. And so I really, came from that place as well. But I see it all the time. People don't want to be too rich, or because rich people are evil, and they don't want to be too successful because successful people throw it in other people's faces and use money to get what they want. And so there's all these judgments about what's going to happen if we get success. It's sort of much like when somebody talks about losing weight, and then they don't realize that when they lose weight, all of a sudden people are going to give them attention, or all of a sudden there's a whole new set of conditions that have changed once they lose the weight or once they make more money. And so there's just this fear of, I don't know how to handle it. And it's much easier to stay in a comfortable place where I know had to, maintain rather than thrive. And I see many businesses that don't move forward because there's this fear of success that unconsciously is holding them back. So we do a lot of work around that.
Well, then think of it. It just dawned on me during this conversation. So I come to the marriage with all my money problems,
right?
And all my money nerve issues, right?
Absolutely.
And all my family baggage. And then my husband comes to the marriage with all of his family baggage, all of his issues and things he was taught. And you combine it. And sometimes it can be positive when you combine, right? But then think of it. We just doubled our issues.
Right.
So do you deal a lot with the married aspect? You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one of the things that I really recommend to couples, and actually I recommend it to anybody, even if you're not in a relationship, is to set up at least weekly or monthly meetings with yourself or with your spouse and, make an agreement that it's not about judging each other, but really working together as a team to figure out how to, empower the family, how to meet the goals, and how to really curb those emotional issues and actually just make it an ongoing conversation so that it's not the hushed, dangerous conversation that some of us think that it's going to be.
Oh, that's a good idea. You talk about in your book how you climbed some amazing mountains. Did that help you with your fear issues? Because I know we all have them at some level. For me, I love being out in the mountains and I love being up in high places. It really gives me a chance to just be in the universe and not be caught up with anything else other than me and whether I can do it or not. And when I went to Everest this last time, my travel companions all were ready to quit because they said this is too much. And I got them to agree to, let's just hike for 30 minutes and then reassess every 30 minutes. And that's what we did. And so we would only agree that we were just going to hike for 30 minutes, even though we knew we had an 8-hour day. We only focused on 30 minutes. And then we'd get to the 30 minutes and we'd agree to do 30 more minutes. And over time, it got easier and it wasn't as overwhelming when we took it in baby bites. And so I think there's really a lesson there that we don't have to do it all at once. We didn't get into our debt all at once, but we can work things out bit by bit, piece by piece, and just stay focused. And so I love being out in the mountains because it really gives me a chance to think and get clear and really think about what's important to me. Well, and I think that a lot of times when we get focused on our job or our business or our debt or the money issues, and you forget to get out and enjoy living,
Absolutely. And, I have to tell you, when I came back, the first time I came back from Nepal, I was gone for a month. I hadn't had really any contact with people except for the 10 people on my trek. And when I got home, the first thing I did was I ran, and just because it gave me comfort, I ran out to my Mercedes, which I had at the time, and I just sat in it for 10 minutes, and I said, I am so grateful for this car. I really just feel so, but it was just because it was for me. It wasn't for anybody else, and it just, I really had appreciation after just having experienced all these places where there was just, poverty and just extremes, and I just had so much gratitude for, my life is good, and I really saw that, and so and I love going to those places because it reminds me of how good I do have it. I wish everybody in the United States could travel because I think they would have much more appreciation for what we really do have here.
That's a good point because so many times we're focused on, getting the new house or the new car and forgetting, I already have a really big house. I'm living in a pretty good house now. So It doesn't mean that, my happiness has to be tied to, getting that next item or, big luxury trip.
Right. But the media I had a client who came to me and said, hey, do you think I'm going to go ahead and sell my house? I've almost paid it off, but I went in and found out I qualified for a $1.2 million loan, so I'm going to buy this other house. And I said, why would you do that? You love your house. Yeah, but they're going to give me a loan. I said, yeah, but you're in an industry that you could lose your job in a year from now and not be able to pay it. And so they sat and thought about it, and then they decided ultimately not to get the new house with the new loan, and they got laid off a year later, and they were so grateful that they had taken pause and really looked at what was important rather than just jump on the bandwagon because everybody was going, go for it, go for it, go for it. And, but that's what the media does. That's what this culture will do sometimes is get on the bandwagon with the rest of us and be miserable.
Yeah, they don't really talk about how great it is to have one less bill because you paid a car off or you paid a house off.
Right.
That's never a conversation you have, at happy hour.
No, absolutely.
Because you don't want to throw it in someone's face either. You might be happy you paid your house off, but, your friends maybe be struggling. And so, but you can't really see that financial success.
Right. It's hard. And, even when you go in to buy a car, if you tell somebody, okay, I can afford $300 for the car, you walk out with a $400 payment because then they told you, well, you could get the leather seats, right? Or you always end up paying more than what you said was your bottom line. Most people do. And we just get caught up. We just get caught up in, oh, I must have it. And we don't need to have it. We need to eat. We need to have some cover. And maybe some clothes would be nice to, but we don't need a whole lot.
Well, I think you've set a lot of us free today, Bob, because, I think we are so hard on ourselves when it comes to the topic of money. So I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And if anyone wants to connect with Bob, go to themoneynerve.com. And you have some workshops this summer that they can find out more information about in LA, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right?
So right now we've got, there's 2 workshops that are happening in June and July. In June, we've got Monday nights, Proactive Abundance. It's at a place called The Village, and that's all on the website. And then July, it's on Tuesday nights for the month of July, and that's at the Agape Spiritual Center. And then we also have a Money at its Core workshop coming up in Santa Monica the last weekend in July. And we're hoping, the plan is I'm going to be doing more workshops in other cities because there seems to be a desire to have this information. So it's exciting.
Well, thanks again, Bob. We'd love to have you back on when you have your workshops expanded. You could fill us in on the progress. And
absolutely.
Great. Well, and thanks to all of you listening. We sure appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to learn tools about how you can release that money nerve. Bob, thank you. And
thank you so much.
Listeners. Have a great week.
Take care.
You've been listening to Big Country Publishing Radio, entertaining conversations to empower and inspire you. For more information, tune in every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, or visit www.bigcountrypublishing.com.